Polly has been creating lyrics with me for a long time, back to the Division Bell 94, but Romany was singing along. Then the current song's coming in, but slowly they all left. David Gilmour doesn't have to yell. He plays just one note and the world becomes quiet. He doesn't go after theater like the spotlight or scandal, doesn't depend on speed or showmanship. In a time when rock music was all about mayhem, Gilmour chose a different course because of his ego, quiet, exact, and irreliable. Every bend of his string breaths hurts, and seems to say a fact that is too real to be named. With carved his name onto the stone while listening to Comfortably Numb, put his name in the history of music. With just one made millions of people stop. No way of technical skill, but because he touched an area that no one else did got to the heart. But who is this guy? How did a guy who was alone from an intellectual family become the heart of Pink Floyd? What made him want to reside in, stay away from the spotlight and talkingly through his songs? Join Rock Discovery now and subscribe.us in finding out about David's journey. Gilmour. Not to show that he was great, Budo teach us that being subtle, persistent, and kindness can still become famous. Life as a child. David Gilmour was born on Cambridge, a city in England, on March 6, 1946, immersed in brilliance, where every wall seemed to echo with talks and argument in school. His dad, Dr. Douglas Gilmour, was a well-known zoologist and a teacher at the University of Cambridge. His mom, Sylvia Wilson, was a journalist with a lot of experience who had worked at the BBC and then taught film research. People who didn't know David thought he looked like he'd been born into the best possible situation, school, stability, and a world of knowledge. But in that very often felt like an outsider in his own house, not from here. David once said that his child is an empty space that no one remembers. His parents were busy, strict, and leaned more toward intellect than feelings. No one hit him. No one left him, but none really listened either. The coldness came from something other than violence. Be quiet. He was raised in a place where Shilarly talks that he couldn't handle dinners without laughing, and chambers where he was supposed to just look out for himself. It was the start of a very introspective life, but also one characterized by a lack of emotional closeness. David at school also didn't feel like they belonged. At the Percy School and then the Cambridge he went at the College of Arts and Technology, not a troublemaker or a role model student, but in a different way. He wasn't not interested in grades, and he didn't join groups of friends. He read books in peace, made a drawing, and then started to listen to music, from Elvis to the Everly Brothers Presley, from folk music in America to Chickagabbles. Then, at age 10, his mom got him a guitar. No one taught him and no one was in charge of him. David learned everything he knew: books, the radio, and being alone. He was alone in his room for hours. In his room, not talking to anyone, playing the same chords and riffs over and over. Music wasn't something I loved right away. It became a safe haven, a place where suffering may be made into a song, a spot where he didn't have to explain, just play. While he was at art school, Gilmour met Syd Barrett in Cambridge, a classmate who will later become the first person to lead Pink Floyd. People got close during jam sessions that went on for hours. A love of the blues that they both have, and long talks about what it means to sound. But Syd was flashy and David was silent and unstable, controlled. Two sides of the same coin, an artistic identity that is growing. If Barrett was fire, Gilmour was water, and life would eventually put them on the same road, where David would not only go with guitar, as well as the shadow his old friend left behind. David Gilmour had no big tragedies, but it was bathed in peaceful loneliness. Something that would be written on every note he played all through his life. And it waste host barren, echoing years that raised a painter who never yelled, but mid-death world would stop talking every time he hit one note. Beginning of a career, before Pink's musical essence, David Gilmour of Floyd went through a long and a rough ride, stuck between a quiet skill and a spotlight that never looked like it was meant for him. In the late 1960s, Gilmour was just in his 20s when he was still having trouble figuring out where he fits in. He wasn't loud on stage, and he wasn't explosive either, well with people, but he had anything that doesn't happen very often. An amazing ear and a guitar touch that could make a room. After finishing art school he and some friends went to Cambridge, drifted through, including Syd Barrett, a few modest ensembles who generally played in France, living from day to day, and at times when they were so poor that they had to trade their instruments for meals. Then, in 1967, came a tipping moment that would change everything. Pink Floyd, then Syd, who was becoming famous. Barrett was starting to fall apart. Barrett's use of LSD had gotten out of control, which caused significant mental unstable. The band was about to fall apart until someone might step forward to take over his voice and his guitar. That David Gilmour was someone. At first, Gilmour came on as a backup player, brought in to fill in for Barrett during live shows since Syd couldn't stay coherent on stage for longer. But they post quickly became permanent. When Barrett left for good in early 1968, Gilmour didn't just take over as lead guitar. He also had to take on some off-band's musical spirit, which is still quite connected to Barrett in the thoughts of fans and the news. Instead of assist or try to take charge, Gilmour decided to show what he could do by music. On early records like A Saucerful of Secrets, 1968, More, 1969, Umaguma, 1969, and Metal in particular. 1971, Gilmour started to form a new Pink Floyd where turmoil turned into depth and psychedelic noise grew into cinematic, slow burning, and soundscapes with many layers of emotion. The song echoes from Metal marked a big step forward. Gilmour was set free for the first time. In a long solo in a complicated musical structure, showing that he wasn't just a guitarist to fill in, but someone who can lead a whole new musical style for the group. Still, Gilmour's contributions are expanding, yet there was no praise for the name yet. The news kept calling Pink Floyd Syd Barrett's old band. Gilmour understood, and he didn't try to deny it. He just kept playing. The first years of David Gilmour's career were a stretch of carrying the weight without speaking up and leading without stepping into the spotlight. But that humbleness became the heart of his craft, never demanding the stage, only tending fire. And that spark, albeit quiet, stubborn, would eventually catch fire and end. Success in your career. No one can find the precise time David Gilmour became the heart and soul of Pink Floyd. There was no official notification, no internal cup. But nevertheless, in the middle of layers of psychedelic sound and meaning, his guitar voice, soft and clear at moments like a dream echoing in your head, softly rose and covered everything. When the song Shine On You Crazy Diamond starts with an intro that lasts more than 3 minutes, people don't ask who leads Pink anymore, Floyd. They just shut their eyes and let Gilmour narrate the story through his strings. Pink Floyd's big break didn't happen in one night. It was the culmination of years of trying new things and failing, and Gilmour was the hidden power behind that change. When The Moon's Black Side came in the year 1973, the world saw not only a technologic and a work of art in terms of ideas, yet mark of an unseen hand weaving every sound element into a whole that fits perfectly. David Gilmour owned that hand. He didn't write the words, and he didn't start the main ideas. Youth was the one who gave Roger Waters ideas that are not concrete, the soul, depth, and timeless echo. From the echoing putting off time to the uneven groove off money, every moment was marked by an artist who never had to talk to be listened to. After The Moon's Dark Side, Pink Floyd kept going. They went in what a lot of people think is their best work. Ironically, the start of increasing tensions within. With which Gilmour poured out all his sadness here, with sadness for his old pal Syd Barrett into the painful chords of Shine On You Crazy Diamond. No need for poetry's Black Stratocaster sang the words of a lost childhood, a broken psyche, and a memory that would never go away. He also changed the simple song Wish You Were Here turned into a song that everyone can sing for missing someone and wanting them. Plain, simple, but strong enough to make millions are crying. But during those wonderful years, Gilmour slowly went into the gray area of a Roger Waters, and I had a creative fight. While Waters wants to turn music more and more into political statements and societal, Gilmour held onto instinct despite criticism, emotion, and subtlety. The record Animals is a clear sign of this separation, dark, tense, and full of lyrics, but bright whenever Gilmour's bits came in. He didn't only play the guitar on Dog's guitar, he carved each note into the track like an unspoken wound, pulling the listener in while leaving them out of breath. Then there was the wall, a huge fortress of thoughts, feelings, and disagreement. Even though this was mostly Roger's, David was the one who came up with Waters' inventive project, Gilmour who gave the album its best. The famous moment, Comfortably Numb, his solo on that track is often ranked one of the best guitar solos ever time. Not because it's hard to understand, but for making people feel so strange, sound pleasant, and so suspended that others who listen can tell the difference between sound and feelings. Gilmour saved The Wall from turning into pure rage, adding it with a weakness that only an artist pain could be very familiar to, but beyond the shine of these famous albums. A modest but deep fight wash appearing within Pink Floyd between Roger Waters and David are creative forces. Gilmour. At first, they said kind things about each other, Waters coming up with concepts and Gilmour bringing them to live. But as time went on, Waters seized more and more control and forced putting heavy-handed political messages on the music. Gilmour found himself pushed aside and made to do someone else's vision. The stress didn't explode noisily, but seeped into every take and every session in the frigid studio, and finally caused a severe break in their style of art. Gilmour wasn't the type of person to get into arguments in thepris, but he decided to answer through music, putting his feelings into solo so moving that they sounded like whispers in storm of reason. On the other hand, Waters made Pink Floyd a place to perform personal manifestos that are daring and controversial. It divides people. Fans were visibly split. One group backed Waters for his intelligence and unwillingness to give in sharpness. The other person stood next to Gilmour, the man who didn't talk much but whose sethy guitar appeared to speak to the spirit of a generation that didn't talk. That fight without words got to the top after The Wall and blew up when Waters departed the band in 1985 and said Pink Floyd is dead and Gilmour is being sued for going on with the same name. When Waters left Pink Floyd in 1985, had to answer a very important question, keep going or stop. And Gilmour, the man who had never claimed to be in charge but then had Toto maneuver the boat. He never got mad against his old bandmate or fought back in the news. Instead, he went in silently the studio and started to revise the band's fate is up to him. A brief loss of rationality and then the division bell didn't only keep the Pink Floyd name alive, keep the Floyd name alive. They showed that Gilmour may be in charge of a version of the band that didn't had to yell to get attention. The song High Hopes made me feel like goodbye to a rough time. He's a gentle voice drifting above bells and meadows, looking back without bitterness. David Gilmour didn't get rich quickly. In a flash. It was based on loyalty and patience. To creative impulse and faith that music doesn't have to be loud to be great. He never stopped on his journey, chased the spotlight. He let sound should find him. And maybe that's why it lingered longer, calm, deep, and not to be forgotten. Career on your own. David Gilmour never asked for credit, and he never got it, needed to get away from Pink Floyd to show his worth. But there are times in an artist's life when they need a place of their own. A place to write, play, and sing in time have their own heartbeats. Not for the band, not for the crowd, only for themselves. That's why Gilmour started hiscomely, honestly, and Alana very deeply inside oneself. His first solo. David Gilmour's first album came out in 1978, when Pink Floyd was still around at its best. It wasn't really ambitious, nor does it want to sell fireworks. It felt more like a personality box full of bluesy chords and raw melodies and a voice that is learning to tell stories that don't hide behind complicatedness. The CD didn't make a major splash, but it gave us a much-needed break. It didn't make a big splash, but it was a nice break. In the epic cycles of Pink Floyd, a calm breath between creative storms. It wasn't until about Face, 1984, that Gilmour really used his own voice to respond to the environment around him. As his relationship with Roger Waters got worse as Pink Floyd was about to fall apart, this album was a subtle statement. He was no longer merely the guitarist in the background. With sharp, plenty of energy and, at times, funny, Gilmour broke out of his typical songs to be quiet, to be a stronger person. Not to face, but to say, I have something to say. 2. It didn't make a lot of money. About Face signified a turning point in the mind when Gilmour came out of the hugethi shadow of a famous band. But it wasn't until 2006 on an island that David Gilmour has found the voice he had been looking for his whole life. After years of touring, fighting, and losing, he went back to the studio in a whole different way of thinking, quiet, thoughtful, and empty to show. The album has a movie-like feel, textures, poetic tones, and a distinctive feeling of closeness. With words written by his wife, the novelist Polly Samson. These songs have a new level of vocabulary and feelings. Gilmour was not anymore making someone else's ideas take shape. He was now singing his own truths as a father, a husband, a man thinking about life in his end of the day. Sitting on an island that was reshaped #1 in the UK, which shows that sometimes silence is the most powerful thing, sound of all. Using that achievement as a springboard, Rattle That Lock 2015 showed Gilmour was free from the image of being a famous person or a former member of Pink Floyd. Have freely tried out several styles, from jazz to ambient, from classic rock to soft textures made by electronics. The music on the album wasn't heavy or dark, as fans would have thought, expected, yet sunny, open, and so many massive fun. But under that independence was the quiet depth of a man who has lived too long with being alone and was now learning to like the light at the end of the day. Gilmour outside of the studio took his own music to some of the most famous stages in the world. His live performing a show in Gdansk in 2006 with not only was a symphony orchestra a musical event, it was a way to honor history was made at the spot where a solidarity movement in Poland. In 2017, he went back to Pompeii, where Pink Floyd had filmed there in 1972, but this time it was just him. The new live show at Pompeii was a full circle moment, where the glory started. Now Beckham's site where he said goodbye to the past with his own songs. David Gilmour's solo work was never about getting away from the shadow of Pink Floyd. It was a trip inside, steady and not in a hurry. In a world of music that gets louder and more unstable by the day, he is still one of the few artists to keep his identity. No following trends, never forcing messages. Merely playing guitar to tell stories and the silence that never scared him, and maybe that's why his solo songs don't require a lot of people to see it. Simply those who are willing to stop and really listen. Life outside of work. David Gilmour is an uncommon persona, well-known person in the world of rock. No public breakdowns, only scandals, calm strength, and unwavering allegiance aid in the slightest off moves. Just like how he plays the guitar, not rapid, not showy, but every note wants to be heard. His personal life mirrors this, never loud, but full off with layers of a spirit that is continuously looking for calm in a world full of chaos. Gilmour, for the first time in 1975, told American artist Ginger Gilmour, who makes sculptures. They met at the height of when he was famous with Pink Floyd, stretched thin between success and rising tensions inside the band. Ginger wrote about David was a peaceful, gentle, and thoughtful person, man who often used music to get away from his feelings. But that's exactly why he was a caring father and a good thinker, husband, always there for his kids even while they are busy touring plans. The pair had 4 kids together for almost 20 years. Gilmour's family provided a safe haven for him from the never-ending fights over new ideas in the studio, but changes in mood and their way of life slowly pulled them apart. In the early 1990s, their marriage collapsed. Without fighting in public or pointing fingers, they said goodbye politely and stayed in contact to raise their kids together. Gilmour has never talked about it in public, the divorce, like he never does with any sadness in his life. No denying, no exposed, just silence and music. He married writer Polly Samson in 1994, writer, journalist, and talented songwriter. Meeting Polly changed Gilmour's life drastically, the process of becoming creative. Not only did she become his partner in life and a good friend partner, working together on many of the songs that are very thoughtful and kind on his albums by himself, On an Island and Rattle That Lock. If Gilmour lived most of the time in music, to be honest, Polly was the only one able to get into that space with both affection and intelligence. They presently live in a quiet home in the English countryside, raising kids from both marriages, including adoptive and stepchildren kids. Even if they don't talk about it much, Gilmour's family life is a safe place away from the press, of stability. A place where he can calm down, fly old planes, read, and walk. Slow down. Fly old planes, read, and walk beside the river, and spend hours in playing music in the studio, not for a job, but just for himself. Their love isn't showy or glamorous, but really honest when it counts. In 2023, when Roger Waters, who was in Pink Floyd, co-founder, made political statements that were not well received with comments against society, Polly Samson made public called him a name on Twitter and that he was anti-Semitic, a supporter of Putin, and a leer full of hate and a hypocrite. The media went crazy. Fans fought, but David Gilmour didn't remain quiet. He wrote, in one clear sentence, I agree with all my wife has said. He didn't fight back. He didn't go into detail. The universe only needed one line. To get it. Gilmour is more than just loyal in affection, yet steadfast in principle, both in music and in ethics. In a society where artists switch partners as frequently as record labels, David Gilmour is a good example of someone who desto live deeply instead of widely. He don't say anything about happiness. He lets it go, let his songs breathe. He doesn't show off his family. He guards them, like keeps his music safe by being quiet, patient, and by keeping what matters most where it belongs, most of the time in the right place. And maybe David Gilmour's love is like his guitar, isn't very bright on the outside, but it stays with depth. A depth that can is attainable in genuine silence enough to pay attention. Influence and legacy. David Gilmour never wanted to be a legend. He didn't take a chance, statements, didn't try to explain music, and never told the new generation about art, but in a peaceful and meaningful way. He made an indelible mark, not simply on records, but on how an entire generation came to grasp what a wonderful melody sounds like, what it means for a guitar to have a soul. Gilmour was never the kind of guitarist amazed with speed or skill drama. He didn't play to show off, never raced against time, and never tried to push himself for the sake of it. What he always wanted was feeling. Every time I play a solo, Comfortably Numb to Shine on You Madiamon felt like a story that was told with words. Not many performers can make people cry with just one long note, tears with a single long note. Gilmour can do it. No explanations, no fanfare, just playing, and the world stops talking. That's why so many people think he is thought of as one of the best, not just by guitarists of all time, magazines like Rolling Stone and Guitar World, but for guitarists like you themselves, Mark Knopfler, John, and other artists. Pheasant, Ed O'Brien, Radiohead, and Steven Wilson and others have called him a guide, a model for adding depth to music that doesn't have to be loud. Gilmour lived at a time when people were obsessed with speedy results, teaches us how to take our time and get more deeply. But his impact goes far more than just guitar technique. As a co-architect of Pink Floyd's trademark sound, Gilmour helped build Gilmour helped establish an entire sound, musical world, movie, and abstract, but yet quite emotive and close. No one else could make rock music can be as eerie and meditative as did. The Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, and The Moon, Wish You Were Here, and that Division Bell wasn't just a business, milestones. They became timeless, listened to spiritual experiences, thought about and passed down for generations. Gilmour has also created a legacy through quiet but strong gestures. He shocked the music world in 2019 by putting more than 120 of his up for auction, guitars, such as the famous Black Strat, for a total of more than $21 million. He gave the whole amount to charities that help the environmental and safety. When people were scared when asked about the decision, he just stated, "You don't have to cling on to things to prove anything. If those guitars can accomplish more, let them go if they're good somewhere else." A simple statement, but one that captures his essence. Not about music caving. It's about giving. David Gilmour's legacy isn't in the charts positions or prizes. It lives in the way it makes folks feel something real in a globe filled of noise. In the way he uses music to help, not control. In the way he always favors peace over fighting and still makes people listen. High's a reminder that depth doesn't come from talking a lot. It derives from talking at the proper time. And in music, like life, can be a note played with a full heart can last longer than any speech. David Gilmour never had to prove himself was a legend. He didn't yell. He didn't chase the spotlight, didn't jump in to play the media game or get into trouble. He kept quiet and stayed in the background, calm, allowing the music do the talking self. And that's what made him so special. In a world of rock and roll that has watched many legends set themselves on fire out with drugs, pride, and false beliefs, David Gilmour stays apparatus. He never said he owned the center, but he was usually in the middle. A guy who let his guitar say what he felt. An artist who made music without speaking that made everyone else quiet. Gilmour music is emotion, not once stated math, and maybe that's why every one of his solos, even just a single note that lasts, can stay with you for all time. A remembrance of a type of rock that doesn't have to shout or run ahead, but stays with more depth, strength, and permanence than the loudest sound. Do you remember something that has to do with the David Gilmour with Pink Floyd's music? Did a solo ever make you stop? Everything only to hear? Please leave your opinions in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to keep coming along with us on this trip via the stories that have stood the test of time.